The moment you heard Teresa Giudice and Melissa Gorga had reconciled, something in your gut probably said wait. Not because you're cynical. Not because you don't believe people can genuinely move past years of ugly, camera-captured warfare. But because you've watched Teresa long enough to understand that she doesn't let things go. She files them. She holds them at a specific temperature, not boiling, not frozen, just warm enough to use when the time is right. And now, with season 15 filming underway, some of what's been circulating in the Bravo universe is starting to feel less like gossip and more like a pattern that anyone paying attention probably saw coming. Let's talk about what's actually being said, and more importantly, what it reveals about the psychology driving all of this. According to insider accounts that have been making the rounds, Teresa has allegedly been reconnecting with Danielle Staub. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly. A follow-back online. Some communication. The kind of low-key re-engagement that technically means nothing and simultaneously means everything if you know the history. And if you've been watching this franchise since its earliest seasons, you absolutely know the history. Danielle Staub is not someone you casually text to catch up. She is not ambient background noise. Every single alliance she's ever formed on this show has come with an agenda attached, and that's true on both ends, not just hers. People don't reach back toward Danielle because they miss her energy at a dinner table. They reach back because she knows things. She's been around long enough, in close enough proximity to enough conversations, that she carries information the way other people carry grudges. And information, in the Real Housewives of New Jersey universe, is currency. What insiders are suggesting is that the interest here centers on alleged emails, messages that Danielle supposedly has from years ago, sent by Melissa, where she was apparently communicating things about Teresa and expressing a desire to be on the show. This is being framed as unverified insider chatter, and it's important to hold it that way. But the pattern of this, Teresa strategically positioning someone with alleged receipts in her peripheral orbit before anything has even gone publicly wrong, that pattern is not speculation. That's Teresa Giudice operating the way Teresa Giudice has always operated. She is not impulsive. People misread her as impulsive because she flips tables and screams at reunions and points fingers across marble countertops. But the emotional explosions are surface. Underneath them, there's always been a very deliberate architecture. She knows what she's building before she starts building it, which makes the reconciliation with Melissa even more worth examining carefully. Because here's the thing. The footage of them together, the birthday party, the surface-level warmth, there were people in the Bravo fandom who wanted desperately to believe it was real. After the exhaustion of season 14, after watching what felt like the complete dissolution of a family and a franchise simultaneously, the idea of genuine peace was appealing. Necessary even. And so some viewers chose to receive the reconciliation at face value because they needed the show to survive, and they needed the family to be okay. But others, and honestly, the number of people who said they didn't buy it from the very beginning was significant. Many Bravo fans interpreted the warmth between Teresa and Melissa as something that felt slightly too convenient. Too timed. The birthday party that allegedly wasn't quite what it was presented as. The hugs that came a little too easily after years of things that don't just dissolve over brunch. And what's being floated now, if you take the insider framing seriously, is that Teresa's calculation was always two-tracked. Yes, she came back to the table. Yes, she's filming with Joe and Melissa. But she also allegedly made sure she had an exit ramp. An insurance policy. Someone she could activate if Melissa did something that gave her reason to go back on the offensive. The Danielle angle is fascinating from a psychological standpoint because of what it says about how Teresa processes trust. Or more precisely, how she processes the absence of it. She doesn't seem to believe, at least according to what's being discussed, that Melissa has fully changed. That the reconciliation reflects a genuine interior shift rather than a mutual survival strategy. And so she's not walking into season 15 unprotected. She's walking in with a hand she hasn't shown anyone yet. Now, whether you sympathize with Teresa in this moment probably depends entirely on your read of the full history. Because there's a version of this where Teresa is the paranoid one, where the reconciliation was real and she's the person quietly poisoning it before it even has a chance to breathe. where her inability to trust is actually the problem, not proof of justified caution. But there's also a version where Teresa's instincts are historically correct. She's been burned in that family in ways that were brutal and public and lasting. The things said about her, allegedly by people in her own circle, during some of the messiest seasons of the show, those things don't vanish because someone throws a birthday party. Hurt that deep tends to live in the body even when the mind decides to move on. And what's interesting is that the resentment reportedly runs deeper than just the show dynamics. The suggestion that Teresa harbors complicated feelings about Melissa's marriage, about the fact that Joe and Melissa have managed to build something stable and functional while Teresa's own marriage went through everything it went through, that's a layer that doesn't get discussed enough. Resentment born from comparison is some of the quietest and most persistent kind. It doesn't announce itself at a dinner party. It sits in the background of every interaction, coloring things slightly, making forgiveness feel slightly more effortful than it looks from the outside. If that's part of what's driving this, and some viewers have been quietly wondering about exactly that dynamic for seasons now, then the reconciliation was never going to be uncomplicated. You can't fully forgive someone for something when part of what you resent about them is simply who they are and what they have. That's not a conflict that resolves with a conversation. So now Danielle Staub is allegedly back in the picture, at least in a quiet advisory capacity. And this is where things get genuinely unpredictable. Because Danielle is not controllable. She never has been. She is, historically, someone who will absolutely deliver what you need until the moment it no longer benefits her to do so, and then she will tell everyone exactly who sent her and why. Teresa has seen this firsthand. Everyone who has ever worked with Danielle Staub on camera has seen this firsthand. So the question people are starting to ask is, does Teresa actually trust Danielle, or is she simply calculating that the risk of having her nearby is lower than the risk of Melissa having unchecked room to maneuver? Because those are two very different strategic decisions with very different implications for how season 15 unfolds. And what happens when Danielle decides that the more interesting story to tell isn't whatever she has on Melissa, but the fact that Teresa called her in the first place? The thing about insurance policies is they're only useful if nobody knows you took one out. Season 15 hasn't aired yet. The full shape of what's actually been filmed is still forming. But the energy surrounding it already has that specific pre-explosion quality that longtime Real Housewives of New Jersey viewers recognize from the seasons that turned out to be genuinely seismic. There's too much unspoken history in too small a room, and at least one person appears to be playing a longer game than what's visible on the surface. Whether Teresa and Melissa actually collapse again, or whether the season surprises everyone and the reconciliation holds more weight than the cynics expected, that remains genuinely open. But the fact that we're already here, before a single episode has aired, talking about alleged back channels and strategic alliances and emails from years ago, that tells you something about the foundation this season is being built on. It's not peace. It's the performance of peace. And there's a difference. Do you think that Teresa and Melissa truce survive season 15? Or is this already cracking before it's even started? Drop your read in the comments. Because if this situation is any indication, we're going to need somewhere to process all of it when it finally hits our screens.